Hi guys, and welcome to another Phil and Jen in the Philippines. It's Phil here in Australia, and it is about 11:45 p.m. Christmas night. Anyway, first of all, before Christmas goes, I'd like to wish everyone the merriest of Christmas, all my viewers, and the very happiest of New Year's. Okay, before we start, to the usual things, subscribe, it's up the top, thumbs up, comment, share with your friends and whatever. Okay, why am I doing a vlog at 11:30 at night? Well, what happens is in the evening I go through all the comments and whatever. It's usually a fairly pleasurable experience, but for some reason it must be a full moon or something because there's a lot of peanuts out. And some of the comments, which I won't go into, I didn't even bother answering, or I just scrubbed. But the general consensus is that a lot of what I say from some of the viewers, which don't happen to be subscribers, have just come across the channel and have stated that I'm too general and this and that doesn't happen, and I exaggerate things and whatever, I'm too negative and all that. So, okay, I thought to myself, maybe that's a possibility. So what I thought I'd do as I lay here awake, rather pissed off, I thought I'll give examples of what occurred to my wife and I, exact examples, and I'll let you make up your mind whether or not I overreact or exaggerate or whatever. And these are some of the examples that took place over the 9 years that I was going in there, the Philippines. Now, everyone knows that I spent most of the time in Mindanao, and my wife and her family had a land in a place called Miitum, actually in a Puruk called Kambing Beach, a very small Puruk, and that was a beachfront Puruk, and we were fortunate enough to have beachfront land, and the land is usually made up of 75-metre frontages which stretch back from the beach around about X distance. It takes up 2 to 2.5 hectares per block. So they're sizable blocks, and the majority of them are used for rice fields. And they stretch down to the water and onto the beaches and whatever, and we have rice fields both sides of us and all up the back and whatever, and the just happens to be that the land naturally slopes very gradually towards our block, and we're probably the lowest block. Now, with all rice fields, if you have a rice field, you've got drainage, obviously, to get rid of the water, and all of these rice fields had drainage that went down to the seafront, and the water was then drained into the sea. Now, these are earthen canals, and they take a fair bit of maintenance, as you can appreciate, being an earthen structure, but all the rice fields had them. Now, as I stated beforehand, we didn't actually grow rice. We had when we first got there, it was a dilapidated tilapia farm that was no longer in use, and I filled the land in, raised the land up, and we built our home on it. And it was all very good. Here was the Westerner, came from Australia. He married a local girl, and we started businesses and whatever. Beside our block of land was our disused canal, but some drainage from our neighbours used to go down into that canal and trickle out. It was no great problem. I didn't mind clearing the canal from time to time, and we just let life go on as it had previously. Well, after about 3 months, the volume of water was getting larger and larger and larger. And I proceeded up the road to find out why the water volume was getting greater and greater. And the further away I got from our block of land, I suddenly noticed that certain canals had been closed off coming from our neighbour's property and redirected down the hill to our canal. Well, that wasn't all that worrying at that stage of the game, because it had increased somewhat, but the canal was holding it. But it was only a matter of 4 weeks before huge volumes of water were coming down, and obviously, because there are earthen canals, starting to erode our block of ground, our land. And we're talking about torrents of water. As you can appreciate, there's probably 10 2-hectare blocks further up from us, all trickling down into our canal. And then I went up the road again and found out that all the canals from all the blocks were disused. They were closed off, and now people had started to set up, squatters had set up camps or homes on where the canals once were. And everyone redirected their water down into our canal. Well, with huge volumes of water, as you can appreciate, as I said, it was eroding, and I don't mean to say small amounts. Great chunks of our land were starting to get washed away. So I appealed to the farmers that they should open their canals because obviously it was doing damage to our property. And they promptly ignored that, laughed, smiled, and kept going. So I said, okay, fair enough. So what I did was I closed off the canal. I got trucks in and I filled up our canal, which obviously the backwater then went back onto their property and started to drown out the front of their property. All they had to do was open the canals. Well, there was a hue and cry about this that I had the gall and audacity to protect my own land. And next thing you know, the police arrived and of course started to lambaste us because we had closed the canal. Mind you, the canal was on our property. We weren't rice growers. We'd only left it open simply as a courtesy to the rest of the people for overflow. But now we were expected to get the entire volume of some 20 hectares of rice fields. And if anyone knows about rice field, it's a huge volume of water. And they ordered me to open the canal up, of which I refused. The next people to come down was the barangay captain. And then I found out that 2 of the plots up the road were owned by the barangay captain. So again, simply because they're barangay captain, I refused to open the canal. They brought in diggers and they dug out on my property the canal to open it up. And of course, as much as they dug out, I filled in again. Well, this went on for a little while, and then all of a sudden the cortege of trucks came down and cars came down, and it happened to be the Lord Mayor of Meaton, who was also a political ally of the barangay captain, bringing with him a squad of police. Now this is becoming bigger than Ben-Hur, and I basically was there by myself with my wife, stating this is our land and you can't do this. The excuse was from the mayor that the canal had been there a long time, so therefore they had right to do this. I refused. And I filled the canal in yet again, and of course that caused an unholy situation in the barangay, and I was told that I had to prop, meaning cement, that particular canal, which would have cost around about 400,000 pesos in concrete because it stretched some 150 metres down to the water's edge. And of course I refused to do it, but their attitude was, you're a Westerner, you've got plenty of money, you can afford to do it. I kept saying this, I have no need to do this. And so therefore I'm not doing it. Well, to cut a long story short, the amount of political pressure on us, and then they were going to charge us, and then it was going to somehow become a criminal matter and whatever. So my wife and I decided to go up and see the Ombudsman. We drove the 160 odd kilometres to the Ombudsman's office and was promptly told that we had to make an appointment and come back in a week's time, which we did. We came home, went back to the Ombudsman in a week's time, and of course the Ombudsman finally saw us. At this stage of the game, he had a file already presented to him from the Lord Mayor, because everyone knows that we're going up to see the Ombudsman. Now, it's our complaint to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman then turned around and said, well, where's your evidence? I said, I don't need any evidence. I'm making a complaint. It's the Ombudsman who does the investigation. Oh, no, sir. You have to present us with evidence in your case, etc., etc., etc. That's all the evidence is, basically. It's our land and they're washing it away. Here's the photos and whatever. Oh, no, you have to have this and that and whatever. Well, it was a complete farce. I wasn't going to move. The Lord Mayor wasn't going to move. The canal was still filled. People were up in arms. I'd already made an enemy of the barangay captain and now the Lord Mayor because I had the gall and audacity to stand up for what rights I thought I had. Well, eventually they came down and spoke to us yet again accompanied by police, and stated that if we unblocked the canal, that the Lord Mayor would pay for the propping up of that and the concrete that's required and whatever. All we had to do was open the canal, and he gave his word. We opened the canal up. He propped about 10 feet, left a whole heap of concrete. When I say he got workers down to prop about 10 feet of the canal rather than the 125 metres that was required, and then disappeared into the woodwork. And the canal remains open to this day, still eroding our property away. So how would you have reacted? As I said, that was a problem that wasn't of our making. That was a situation where they took total advantage because of political influence. Okay, a second one that people may be interested in, because, okay, they could say, oh, that happens down south and it's not the rest of the Philippines. I could go on and on and on. So let's go one for Visayas. When we were moving, we wanted to obviously take the furniture from Mindanao to Dumaguete, and I wanted to hire a truck. So I looked around at all the companies. I found one that was quite willing to hire a truck, rather expensive at 70-odd thousand pesos for the one-way trip, which is only about 300 kilometres. But anyway, that's what it was going to cost. I informed them that I wanted to hire a truck to take our goods from point A to point B to Dumaguete, and it had to be there on a specific date. They couldn't accommodate with the date, but they said it'd be there 2 days later, which was approximately 10 days after the goods left. I agreed to that. The first thing that occurred, even though they had someone come and look at the furniture we were moving, the truck was 3 days late in picking the goods up. Okay, it's the Philippines, these things happen. The next thing, the guys obviously didn't know how to pack furniture in a truck, so we ended up having to pack the truck. The truck was too small for the amount of goods we took, so we had to leave 1/3 of our property there anyway. The price didn't change or get any smaller, but on the same token too, at least we got the stuff on board. And they left, and they went off into the distance with a date to be delivered. We promptly then transported ourselves and our family to Dumaguete and to a place that we had rented, and there we waited in an empty house for our stuff to arrive, and waited and waited, and the day came and went, and we waited and waited and waited. Now get this is not a small company. Its headquarters is in Manila. They have offices all over the Philippines, and we were assured that their motto was, we will take care of the property better than you possibly could yourself. Okay, that all sounds wonderful. They came off the net and everything like that, and I'd had enough of waiting, so I called the officers to say, where is our furniture? And we're not talking about junk. It was all stuff that we purchased brand new. It was double beds and king-size beds and a set televisions and, probably about $500,000 pesos, worth of furniture, which is a sizable amount of furniture for over there. They then informed us that it's in Manila. I said, how in God's name could it possibly get in Manila? And they said, we put it on the barge and it goes via Manila. Now, I informed them that I hired a truck. I gave them instructions and that they were to drive the 2 days to Dumaguete. And I was giving them a day extra because it's only about 300 or so kilometres. But on the same token, I gave them 2 days. And I was quite happy for them to wait the specified date. They defied that because it was cheaper to go by barge. And some 2.5 weeks later, our stuff is in Manila. Sir, we will guarantee that it's there in 3 days, the barge is coming down. Okay, a week later, the barge is in Cebu, with all the excuses under the sun. Eventually, a month later, it gets to Dumaguete. And the guys bought the stuff up, unloaded it, and I could hear from the boxes that the fragile written on the side is obviously Tagalog for dropkick, because there was literally 1/3 of our goods which were totally destroyed. I brought this up. The guy said, look, we're only subcontractors. You'll have to get with the company. I called the company. The company said, are the guys left? And I said, yes, the guys are subcontractors. They left. They brought it from the barge to us. Well, the excuse then was, well, you shouldn't have let them go because they've obviously broken it. Now, this was farcical and ludicrous. It had been on the water for 3 weeks. It had been loaded and unloaded from trucks and barges on 3 different occasions, and the stuff was absolutely destroyed. Well, fortunately, it only paid 50% down, and I had 50% to pay. The only thing they were interested in is the next 50%, which I refused to give them. And again, we get into a situation where the threats of police and the threats of this and the threats of that were going, all and sundry, and that they possibly couldn't have broken any of this stuff. The mere fact that I had 65 photographs of stuff as it arrived and we unpacked it meant nothing. Well, that was the 2 things that I'll bring up. There are a myriad more, but what I'd like to know is how you people out there, whether you're living in the Philippines or outside of the Philippines, would have reacted. Is this a situation which you're willing to put up with because, hey, we're in the Philippines and this is the way they do things? My attitude is, if they take my money off me, I should get a certain standard and at least have somewhere to complain to or have some legal recourse if something goes wrong. This does not occur. So if I'm paying, and remember this, I've invested nearly $750,000 Australian dollars in this country, knowing full well that I would possibly lose it, but I did it to assist my family over here. I could have afforded to do it and whatever. So it's not as though I am that upset with losing a great deal of that money. What I am upset about is they made it so uncomfortable for us to live where we built our house that we eventually left. And this is some of the things that, yes, I have my nose out of joint about. And these are some of the things I talk to you about, if you haven't gone to the Philippines, to be very, very careful of. Now, I've met thousands upon thousands of fabulous Filipinos. The unfortunate thing is the bad things stick in the back of your head, especially if they're done by major companies, government departments and whatever. They're the shakers and movers of the country, and that's the impression that they leave on people such as ourselves. So yes, we can avoid things, and I suggest you do avoid things and try to do as much as you can yourself. It's easy to say, go with trusted companies, but I don't trust the trusted companies because for every company that I've been involved with in the Philippines, somehow I've come out second best. My family have come out second best. And we are the subject of ridicule because I have nerve to speak up. Now, a lot of the things I speak about here from government departments and whatever, people say, why didn't you say you're in the Philippines? The reality of the situation is that I would have probably got deported because somehow it would have been construed that I was involving myself in government businesses, or at worst, because I was in Mindanao, and considering the last 3 or so of the 5 mayors have been assassinated down there, it's not an idle threat to say, if you keep your mouth open and exposing things, you will get killed. And as dramatic as that sounds, it's something that does happen. And it happens regularly in the South. So that's one of the reasons I speak out whilst I'm here. People are suggesting that whilst I'm speaking out, I may be putting my wife in a certain amount of danger. That's another reason I don't have her on a huge amount of time. Anything that we speak about is just mundane, run-of-the-mill, pleasant stuff, and I do the others. I do the ones that I think people should actually know about. Now, if that's an exaggeration, that's only 2 examples. I can give a myriad of examples over 9 years, but it sounds like I'm anti on everything. And I can give probably 3 times more examples of things that occurred to me over there that were absolutely wonderful. It's very difficult to love a place like I love the Philippines and ignore what goes on when, as far as I'm concerned, all these things can be fixed as long as they're recognised and as long as something positive goes towards it. There'd be so there would be so much more less um, disappointment by people if they only knew what goes on, so they could do things like avoid things. It happened to me. I don't want it to happen to other expats that go over there, and that's why I do the vlog. So for all you guys out there, both living there and thinking about living there, think that I'm a naysayer and I've got my nose out of joint about it and I'm just being anti the Philippines. You couldn't be furthest from the truth, because I wouldn't be doing this unless I'm trying to promote the Philippines to do certain things. I realise that that's almost impossible, but at least bring it to the attention of people. And there's a lot of Filipinos that agree with what I say, and they understand what's going on, and they are as disappointed as I am. You know, I would love to go back to the Philippines and just live a nice, quiet life. But my personality is such that I am not going to get the shit kicked out of me by anybody simply because they think they can get away with it. So that's why I do it. There was one other comment that really sort of got up my nose, some person that came across it, and because I've since realised what he was talking about, you may have seen the comment, "Be warned that this guy is going to take your money," meaning obviously referring to me. I immediately thought, because the film he'd looked about was about investment in the Philippines. And I wrote back and I said, how's that possible? I'm saying, if anything, don't invest unless you're 100% sure. And then I realised in that video I mentioned my friend's small business about sourcing bits and pieces for people in the Philippines. By God, is that all you've got to do? Is that your attack on me as far as I'm going to rip people off for a bloody spark plug or something? Please, like, get a grip of yourselves. There are some real plonkers out there, real plonkers. And, if you're listening, if you see this, mate, you've got a real problem. But anyway, guys, the rest of you, I enjoy your comments. And we do have some debate on it, on the comments. I love the debate. As I said, if you can educate me as to I'm 100% wrong, I'm only too happy to be 100% wrong. But, bring up anything you'd like. I love talking about it. I love it more so thinking about it, because, I know I'm not right 100% of the time, and I'm just trying to convey my experience over there. So listen, guys, that's it for now. Merry Christmas. As again, the happiest of New Year's. Subscribe, all that type of thing. We'll see you in the next vlog. Cheers for now.